I'm back to talk about Bard. We're going to make a third guide here real quick for the date of July 16th, 2024. We're going to talk about several Bard builds. 4 to be exact. We're going to talk about support Bard. We're going to talk about battle Bard. We're going to talk about bow and range Bard. And we're also going to talk about reinforced instruments. We're going to start out with our gear sitting at 13 gear score. This build that I'm going to suggest to you is going to require some quests to be done. But if you prefer to be in your 0 to 24 gear score lobbies, we'll talk about that real quick. And then we'll go on to 25 to 124. And then we'll go on to uncapped and high roller. Talk about solo, duo, and trio as we go along with the build, as we go along with the guide. So starting out real quick, of course, we're going to want all 4 of our instruments on our belt: lute, drum, lyre, flute. The gear that I suggest starting out with in these low lobbies is maximizing our dexterity. We're going to go with the venture boots, cloth pants, grand brigadine, if we can, straw hat for the strength on the top, and leather gloves. We're mainly going to be using rapier and buckler as well, with survival bow in the offhand. Going into the build in general use, this is how I'm playing my Bard, no matter what gear score lobby I'm in, no matter what team I'm in or anything. I mainly run battle Bards. We're going to talk about battle Bard first. This is the perks and abilities that I suggest with battle Bard. We have charismatic performance, of course. We're never going to take off charismatic performance no matter what we do with Bard, no matter what build that we do. This is a make or break for our class. We are also going to use Rapier Mastery, and the reason for that is because a Rapier's damage per second when you have uptime and you don't miss any of your shots has higher DPS than the Falchion and the Arming Sword. There is some talk about Rondell Dagger being good here as well, and if we are going to be using Rondell Dagger, I would actually take off Rapier Mastery and substitute it for either superior dexterity or even jolly time. Even 10 move speed, 5 health. This is really nice for healing on the go, because as you drink your alcohol, this just heals you, period. It's not an overtime effect. It's an instant 5 health, comes back, scales up with physical healing as well, as far as I know. But we're using a rapier, so we're going to be using Rapier Mastery. Other than that, I use Fermata, as it increases the buff duration. Resourcefulness increases our buff duration for all of our songs, including on other people. Very important note there. This does increase buff duration for songs on other people as well, with exceptions being Allegro and Accelerando. We'll talk about that when we get into the music portion. And then lastly, I use Warsong, which I also believe to be, because of the way the game scales right now, Warsong to be the best, one of the best perks that we can use. Probably the second best perk that we can use for Bard right now. Weapon damage, 3 weapon damage scales, very nice right now with the way the game is balanced. This is subject to change, of course. This is Iron Mace we're talking about, so keep that in mind. But for now and for the foreseeable future, Warsong is very strong. If I could replace Fermata, again, we can look at superior dexterity. Even Storyteller, if you're a support Bard, you need a little extra knowledge. And even Wanderer's Luck, if you're stacking a lot of luck, but do not suggest stacking luck right now, as the way that it scales and the way that luck works. Sometimes it could be a hindrance to have too much luck, as opposed to 0. With that said, we're going to move on to music. Now, this is, again, I'm going to reiterate, for Battle Bard here. What I like to use for my buffs, we'll start there, is Ballad of Courage, Rousing Rhythms, Beats of Alacrity, Shriek of Weakness, Area of Alacrity. Sorry, we're going to ignore Song of Silence for now. But Area of Alacrity. So these 4, Ballad of Courage, Rousing Rhythms, Beats of Alacrity, Area of Alacrity for our buffs. Harmonic Shield is a preference if you like wearing a little bit more PDR, if you like wearing your Grand Brigadines, heavy Gambesons, this could be good. Also in team play, if you're playing with a Cleric that has the Cleric perk that gives armor to teammates, and your Cleric is also wearing heavy armor, or a fighter that's wearing heavy armor, or a Plate Warlock, a Harmonic Shield scales very well with those people, and even for yourself, depending on how you build. But this is, at the end of the day, Harmonic Shield is preference. You don't have to take this. You can easily replace this for Unchained Harmony or Allegro or Accelerando. The 2 other songs that I did not note here, or 3 rather, is Lament of Langor, which is very strong in today's meta in the 124 lobbies, and even sometimes in High Roller, depending on the classes that you encounter. And Song of Silence, which again, very strong depending on the classes that you encounter. If you're able to get a Song of Silence off on a Warlock that is kind of pushing a corner, it can be very devastating for the enemy team, as you can lock down that Warlock very nice and just completely turn the table and the shift of the fight into your favor, getting very aggressive as they're silenced for 2 seconds, and then they'll actually have to sit there and recast their spells again, slowing themselves down again. This is a very good momentum creator for you and your team if you use it on the right people at the right time. Tranquility, I use Tranquility here more of a solo play. Drinking a health pot and then playing Tranquility and sitting down could be a very fast way to regain your health without having to use a campfire or spam bandages. If you have white bandages or higher, those heal faster, heals per second, than sitting down with a health pot and Tranquility at the same time. So you're better off, if you have white bandages or higher, you're better off just drinking a health pot and then bandaging yourself with those high quality bandages. For this last portion right here, this last slot, I save for either Accelerando or Allegro. Typically, personally, I don't run both. I interchange these. I value both of them as good as each other. If your team, talk with your team, or if you have a personal preference, if you enjoyed the action speed and the spellcasting speed of Allegro, then use Allegro. If you prefer the running down and extra move speed that you get from Accelerando, then use Accelerando. We have a little bit of customization here. We can take off Harmonic Shield, like I said, and we can run both at the same time. This is really good for our support bards, as getting both of these off before a fight begins and getting value from both of these, since they only last 8 seconds, is very difficult for the bard to be able to get value out of them. But playing these both for your teammates as they're running into a fight can be very good, and then you can follow up with the Shriek of Weakness. But personally, I prefer running with one, so when I start a fight, and I already have all my buffs up, we locate a target, we know they're there, we're going to open up any doors. As we're opening up any doors, I'm playing Accelerando or Allegro, and then once that gets played, I'm following my front line in with my flute out to play Shriek of Weakness, and I'm going to get Shriek of Weakness off on the first target that we can get our hands on, and then, of course, weaken them, pull out my rapier, hit them on the flank, and kind of just suffocate that one person that we can get our hands on, and hopefully turn the fight very quickly into a 2 versus 3 or a 1 versus 2, that sort of deal. Very good stuff. If we're running support, again, I would probably remove Tranquility. We'll run Harmonic Shield and Allegro. And this is pretty much the same thing that I would run as support bard. This is your backline bard. This is the one that's playing songs. You're more so, instead of getting your instrument out and getting active that way, or your weapon out and getting active that way, you're instead playing stuff like Lament of Langor to slow the enemy, Song of Silence to make sure they can't use any abilities or spells, that sort of thing. You just kind of let your team do everything for you if that's the way that you want to play. One last note I want to make about the song wheel, which is a very important note, is how we calculate our music memory and the order of songs that we put on down here on this cost limit bar. So as we see, what you want to do is you want to put all of your songs that are not Lute associated first. It doesn't matter what order you put these in, and I'm talking about order down here on the wheel. So down here where it says cost limit, we have our drum songs, we have our lyre song, or our flute song, sorry. We have our flute in the middle here, and then the green representing our lyres songs. And at the end, we want our lute songs always at the end. And the reason for this is because, where's my Song of Silence? There we go. We're sitting here, we're in our gray kit, right? We're in our gray kit. We have 20 knowledge. And it says that we do not have enough memory to play these songs. So I'm going to teach you a trick right here. We are not running Storyteller, right? So we have 14 out of 17. To play all of our songs, we need 17 knowledge, right? Little trip. We're going to get 2 from Rousing Rhythms. This is correct. This is pretty common knowledge for bards now. So when we play our songs in our order, we want Rousing Rhythms to be first. Because it gives 2 to all stats, right? That means more will, more resource on this, more dexterity. This is going to allow us to play our songs faster. They're going to last longer. And it's going to give us 2 knowledge, which is going to extend our cost limit down here, our bar. So instead of 14, we're going to be sitting at 16. But Vix, 16 is still less than 17, is probably what you're asking. And you would be correct. There's one more trick that we have up our sleeve, and why we put the lute songs at the end is because when we pull out our lute to play our lute songs, because you have to have your lute out if you're going to play your lute songs, right? Duh. our lute is actually giving us more knowledge. Now, I know I have a white one here. Unfortunately, I did the Squire quest. Maybe I could show it on the Tavern Master. Yeah, there we go. So we have a gray one here. We have a gray lute here. It still has 1 knowledge. So with that being said, when we pull out our lute and we have our rousing rhythms buff up, we're going to gain that 1 last knowledge point. It's going to put us at 17 cost limit, allowing us to play all of our music that we have listed here currently. Now, if we take off all of our lute songs and we put on Tranquility, again, this is, you know, just kind of personal preference here. We'll put on Lament of Languor first, and then Song of Silence second, and then we'll do Area of Alacrity third for our last one. That's going to put us at 19 out of 14. So with our buffs up, our rousing rhythm up, and we pull our lute out that has 1 knowledge, we will not have enough to play Area of Alacrity because we will be at 17 instead of 19. So in fact, we won't even be able to play Area of Alacrity. We won't even be able to play Song of Silence either. We take off Song of Silence, Area of Alacrity comes on, that's 14 out of 17, and then you put Song of Silence last. That means if you find 2 knowledge in the dungeon, you'll be able to play Song of Silence. And I know this is a little complicated, but once you play and you play around with this, and you start playing around with Bard, it becomes a little easier to understand. This is just me breaking it down, yapping at you, trying to tell you how it works. Just some things to keep in mind, especially when you start finding more powerful lutes in the dungeon that start giving 5 knowledge, like that. It's the only instrument that does it. Flute gives agility to dexterity, lyre gives resourcefulness, drum doesn't give anything, and lute gives knowledge. So now that we talked about our gear for 25 lobbies, or under 25, we talked about our build and how we're really going to build, what songs we're going to be using going forward, our perks and skills. Lastly, of course, we're going to use double music memory. Don't use dissonance unless you're going to be playing Reinforced Instrument Bard. And instead of breaking down Reinforced Instrument Bard, I already made a video showcasing it. I'll put it up here in like the thumbnail in here somewhere. I don't know, somewhere around here. And a link will be to that video in the description. It's a quick 6-minute video showcasing Reinforced Instrument and how strong it is. It is viable in our 124 lobbies and below. It can be viable in High Roller 2. I haven't taken it in there yet, but I'm sure you can make it work. And there's also some clips in there to showcase it to prove that my guide does work. With that said, we're going to talk about our stat weights. We'll go over here. So we're going to talk about our stat weights and what we should be prioritizing as Battle Bard or DPS Bard or Melee Bard, whatever you want to call it. The main thing that we want to worry about is that we're above 15 strength, which pretty much comes at default if we're wearing our straw hat. The reason for that is because if we're below 15 strength, we get negative physical damage bonus, and our damage starts scaling negatively. We do not want that. So we need to make sure that our strength, at a very bare minimum, is above 15. Sitting at 20 is a good place to sit when we start talking about gear affixes. I'll explain that and where all of our damage is going to be coming from. But yeah, strength for the most part, 15. Vigor is going to depend whether or not you want to be as tanky or not. If you want to prioritize instead of cloth pants for dexterity, you can put on some heavy leather legs for vigor, or even your crafted gear, not demon clads, but wolf hunters, I believe. You know, those are the more expensive ones when you have more 4 strength, 6 max health. Prioritize a little more vigor when you have a lot of PDR. There are counts of Bard PDR reaching as high as 60% right now, so that's pretty good. But personally, I prefer to worry more about this stat right here. Dexterity. Agility will gloss over. This is just our kind of move speed. This doesn't really help us too much. If you want to be a move speed bard, if you want to be a range bow bard, you want to kind of prioritize agility and dexterity a little bit more than you would strength or vigor for your move speed. But for the most part, our most important stat that we're going to want to get up is dexterity, and this is for a multitude of reasons. Dexterity increases the manual dexterity stat of our character and increases our action speed. And our dexterity is our highest stat as base kit bard. Despite even wearing all of this, we can take all this off, right? And we're still sitting at 20 dex, which is pretty good. Sitting at 28 dex, what we want to aim for dexterity is around 35 to 40. I believe the breakpoint right now is 35 dexterity. That is a very comfortable amount to be at for playing instruments, the speed of our instruments, the speed of our songs, and the weapon swing of our rapiers or arming swords or falchions, whatever you decide to use. This is our best offensive stat and our best resourcefulness stat, as it allows us to do what we do best, which is playing music. Allows us to do it faster. Knowledge is an okay thing to kind of like keep out a look for if you want to play more of those heavy spells. If you want to meme around with, where's it at? with like Song of Shadow on the end here. Throwing on Allegro, Accelerando. Maybe you don't want to play Song of Silence, you know? You don't want to take on Tranquility. You want to play Allegro, Accelerando, and you want to do Song of Shadow, which can be funny sometimes. You're looking at 26 cost limit. It can be a lot, even if we, you know, put Area of Alacrity at the end and Lament of Languor at the end. It can be kind of hard to do that. So keep an eye out for some knowledge, depending on how the way that you want to build. And then resourcefulness, I wouldn't worry about at all. The main quality of resourcefulness for us is our buffs get to last longer. With Fermata, giving us an extra 5 from our perk. Sorry, I am in the way. With Fermata giving us an extra 5 resourcefulness, I still wouldn't worry about it too much. 5 is plenty to make it last longer than you need it to. It'll last about 2.5, 3 minutes. Yeah, your songs just last way long enough. If you need more time than 20 resourcefulness for your songs to get effectiveness out of, to be able to do what you need to do, then I'm sorry, I gotta say it, kind of a skill issue. So 5 resourcefulness from Fermata, plenty of resourcefulness for us to get everything done that we need to do. Down to bosses, PvP, engagements, anything like that. So gearing for our higher lobbies, we do want to keep an eye out for Grand Brigadines and cloth pants, leather gloves, that sort of stuff. I want to touch on Survival Bow and why we're taking Survival Bow as well, as opposed to Crossbow. Before, we were usually taking Crossbow every single time. But I believe no matter what type of bard that you're playing right now, the Survival Bow is probably the best. However, if you have incredible aim and you can hit your headshots with the crossbow, definitely take the crossbow. The crossbow kind of lives or breathes and dies whether or not you're able to hit those headshots. Damage drop-off for crossbow has been touched significantly. Trying to get a lot of value out of a regular crossbow on bard right now is very hard, unless you're stacking a ton of true physical damage with body shots. But if you hit the head, it's still very, very good. However, for a more consistent damage output at a range, I do suggest Survival Bow at this time. It does have a little bit of armor penetration, just enough to, you know, soften up your target as you're moving into them, or just pecking at pesky warlocks at a range that are missing their curses or anything like that. I'll segue into Survival Bow build as well right now, which our range build, we're going to take off Rapier Mastery, or if you want, you can take off Fermata, but you're definitely going to want Warsong and Charismatic Performance regardless. You're going to take one of these off and you're going to slap on Superior Dexterity as playing your music and getting your instruments out to play Lament of Languor, and then turning around and bringing the Survival Bow out to peck at your enemy with Superior Dexterity, super fast. You can just peg them down, and with the move speed penalty from Lament of Languor in our current meta, this can be a very, very strong combination. As you're getting your Warsong uptime, you're getting value out of Warsong from your uptime of Lament of Languor. You can also get your Shriek of Weakness out, rolling out your flute, and then again keeping your range, and you'll be using your Survival Bow. This is very, very good and is pretty decent in all aspects of the game right now, from gear score 0 to high roller. Survival Bow Bard is very strong and is very worth it right now. If you are interested in running a ranged Bard build, now is your chance. On top of that, I would suggest running, for your buff song instead of Accelerando, I would suggest running Allegro, as getting Allegro and having all 3 stacks off of this song while using your Survival Bow, you can get a lot of shots out very fast. And God forbid if you get your hands on a Bow of Elven Truth, as the combination is very, very, very strong in the current meta of things right now. When you get to the higher end, the super high end of the game, your 125 gear score and higher, I 100% suggest looking out for true physical damage. Now, when I say that Dexterity is going to be the source of our damage, it's because of stats like true physical damage. You're going to want it on your rings, your necklaces, gloves, any item that you can get true physical damage on. That's going to be your main source of damage. True phys damage stacking right now is very strong in the current meta. This is subject to change, and if it does, we'll take a look at how true phys damage or additional phys damage works with our high dexterity, or maybe we just take a complete turn, put on a falchion, put on physical power bonus and physical power percent and strength, and start stacking strength, and we'll see how that works if it comes down to it. But for the current meta right now, true physical damage is going to be your best friend, as well as a high dexterity count. As for movement speed, there's only one thing I would keep an eye out for with your movement speed is make sure when you have your buffs up, this is not a good indicator right here at 287 inside the lobby, but when you have your buffs up, when you have your rousing rhythms up and your beats of alacrity up, you want to stay at around 280, 290 move speed with your weapons out. That's kind of what we're looking for. Get a little bit of move speed on your boots. You definitely want move speed stat being prioritized no matter what on your boots. That is number one priority. Your bonus move speed and move speed percent. A pair of boots like these two right here, adventurer boots right here, 4 dexterity, 5 additional move speed, 1.5% move speed percent. That is perfect. Literally cannot get any better unless it is found on a purple adventurer boots or legendary with an additional stat on it. And if you cannot find move speed bonus percent, finding 2 agility and additional move speed is also a good substitute as well. Those are your best stats on your boots. Everything else is kind of hit or miss. Doesn't really matter. You can prioritize armor, bonus armor, armor pen, more dexterity, knowledge if you need it. So yeah, that's about everything that I could think of for Bard. Let me know if you like this guide. If you want to know about the Lute build, the reinforced instrument build, there will be a link again on the bottom of the description. Feel free to check it out. And I hope you are able to learn and enjoy Bard a little bit more with this guide.